Ukraine has been criticized a lot for its counteroffensive. Too slow, too inefficient, and also too spread out. Various reports in big and influential media outlets, citing various officials and experts, complained about different aspects, but particularly one stood out. According to the New York Times, in a video teleconference on August 10th, General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, his British peer, Admiral Tony Radakin, as well as General Christopher Cavoli, the commander of the US forces in Europe, urged Ukraine's top general, Valeriy Zaluzhnyi, to focus Ukraine's troops on one main front. According to them, one of the main factors for the slow offensive is that instead of concentrating a bulk of Ukraine's troops, newly created brigades and older, more experienced ones, combining them for one big push, the higher command has chosen to spread out the troops over the 1,200-kilometer-long active front line in a more or less even manner. Newly created brigades like the 47th and the 33rd in the south, older, more experienced ones like the 72nd Mechanized Brigade or the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade in the east. So, welcome to Talking Tactics, where this week we want to try to offer a very brief and simple, yet hopefully effective explanation as to why Ukraine's strategy is what it is. Let's begin with the first myth, the idea that only new and inexperienced brigades are fighting in the south. The 68th Jaeger Brigade was the first to hoist the Ukrainian flag over the liberated village of Radakin. Storozheve was recaptured by the 35th Separate Marine Brigade. The 128th Mountain Assault Brigade recaptured the strategically important village of Pyatikhatki. So, it is quite understandable when the reaction of the Ukrainian government to all this criticism is pretty straightforward.
Criticizing the slow pace of counteroffensive equals to spitting into the face of Ukrainian soldier who sacrifices his life every day. I would recommend all critics to shut up, come to Ukraine and try to liberate 1 square centimeter by themselves.
An American soldier fighting for Ukraine who we interviewed said,
"And anybody who says this assault is too slow is an idiot."
the primary goal of the counteroffensive remains to sever the Russian-controlled territories into two, creating essentially two separate regions of control, isolating especially the south, cutting supply lines by land and also via Crimea. This is why, parallel to attacking on land, Ukraine has been attacking via the Black Sea, setting its sights especially on the notorious Kerch Bridge. Although this makes it seem like the South will decide the war, Ukrainian commanders have divided troops and firepower roughly equally between the East and South. Why? The main reason, apart from minimizing losses this way by relying on smaller but more precise attacks, is simple. They have to. For one, Russia is trying to pull a cheap copy of last year's successful Ukrainian counteroffensive that led to the liberation of the Kharkiv region. Russia has deployed an estimated 100,000 soldiers to eastern Ukraine over the past months, hoping for exactly what many expected Ukraine to do. While Kyiv attacks in the south, Russia can seize the opportunity to march east. But Ukraine's commanders didn't want to make the same old mistake Russia did, by leaving weak defenses in the shadow of another fight. That's why, for example, the famous Azov, which has now risen like a phoenix from the ashes after the release of the high command from Russian captivity, has been redeployed for the first time since their heroic defense of Mariupol. Not in the south, but east, near Kreminna, where the battle for the adjacent forest has been raging for months. There is another reason. When you look at the minefields laid out by Russia in the south, when you listen to Ukraine's soldiers who are fighting there, like a tank commander in our story about Leopard 2s that you can check out, who says that they often only have one line that they can navigate back and forth to attack and retreat, then you start to understand this kind of war, with all its drones, its electronic warfare, minefields, with a non-stop contested airspace, is something even the very war-experienced USA has not had to endure yet. Take this example. Ukrainian soldiers at the front line, or even 20 kilometers behind it, most typically don't live in large bases that are drawn up overnight with generators, a gym, and medical tents. They live in small groups, spread out, in forests, dugouts, abandoned flats and houses. Why? It's too dangerous otherwise. You would be too exposed. As soon as a drone spots you, your clock begins to tick. And for this reason, it's almost impossible, from a security aspect, to bring tens of thousands of soldiers into one sector for a long period of time and tell them, go, attack. Let's switch to the east again and take a look at the situation around Bakhmut. On the 17th of September, the Ukrainian armed forces announced the liberation of Klishivka, a town south of Bakhmut, by the 80th Air Assault Brigade, 5th Assault Brigade, as well as the Lyud Brigade. The commander of the ground forces, Alexander Syrsky, announced that during the operation, Ukraine effectively neutralized 3 Russian brigades. But still, in their push for Bakhmut, Ukraine has been criticized for spending a lot of manpower to essentially gain very little. But why does Ukraine continue to launch assaults in this direction? The first reason is tactical, to create an exhausting effect, binding Russian troops to this area and stopping them from being deployed elsewhere. According to the Institute for the Study of War, elements of 2 of Russia's 4 airborne divisions, the 106th and the 98th, and 3 of Russia's 4 separate airborne brigades, the 11th, the 31st and the 83rd, are currently defending the Bakhmut area. And it's blatantly obvious. If they're fighting there, they can't fight elsewhere. So it's not really Ukraine that is fixated on Bakhmut, it's Russia. That brings us to the second reason, which is motivation. To take revenge for the barbaric destruction of the city and terrorizing of its inhabitants through the Russian army and the Wagner PMC. After all, the capture of Bakhmut, or at least what was left of the city, was Russia's biggest success and served as a construct for a lot of their propaganda during the past months. To take back the city would mean also to take away the only small success they have. Let's take a closer look, which will hopefully underline what we have laid out so far in this video. The fight for this area is brutal. If we consider troop positions and topography near Bakhmut, it is objectively a disadvantage for the Ukrainian armed forces to attack via the northern flank. So far, any attempt to gain a foothold in the area of the Berkhovsky Reservoir has not been successful, as the Russians still occupy the higher ground behind. But the recent liberation of Klishivka and the surrounding higher ground allows Ukrainian troops to establish a further foothold and to pummel a wide area with artillery in preparation for any further assault. Also, this area contains a vast network of trenches that were originally built by the Ukrainian army before they were captured by Wagner under huge losses. The city of Klishivka was key for Russian forces to eventually capture Bakhmut. The entire southern flank below Bakhmut, the strip Klishivka, Andriivka, Kurdyumivka, was chosen as the main direction of the Ukrainian counterattack not only because of the topography, but because of its proximity to Chasiv Yar, which has been pretty fortified by Ukraine's armed forces during the past months and is easily accessible via the town of Konstantinivka. This important connection allows the Ukrainian forces to rotate troops and resupply, transferring fresh reserves. Giving up this area by losing it, by withdrawing troops, or even easing off the pressure would allow Russia to gain momentum either here or in other parts of the front line. This is unacceptable. War should always be regarded as something multidimensional. Any event in one place can always provoke a reaction in another. So, for now, it's not only the best, but really it's the only choice to continue pushing simultaneously on 2 front lines, south and east. Thanks for watching Talking Tactics. Hit like and subscribe, and also you can follow us on Telegram. See you next week.